Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I'm here with Chad Yarbrough. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. Although we've had some back and forth here, and I'm a firm believer of divine timing. When it's right, it's right. And this is our space to communicate about genetics. Chad, it's such a, God, I'd call it a river of misinformation when you get on the interweb and start looking into how can genetics support my lifestyle and my path towards better wellness. It's really like, it's one of those great examples of it's great information. And then you have to ask yourself, who is it coming from? What is the source? Is it reliable? Is somebody trying to sell me something? Which is why I needed to have you on the show. So let me ask you this. When did you first start becoming interested in genetics?
That's a good question. I guess I got pulled into a functional med clinic probably around 2012, maybe 2011. And I worked with a couple MDs and a brilliant nurse practitioner. And they were using it in practice. And we were running 23andMe and looking at different genetic variants. And I just saw the results that we were having. I was just blown away with it. And I was into blood work. I was into organic acid testing, hormone testing, everything that, from a functional standpoint. But genetics was just like the foundation of everything. And we had spectrum kids, nonverbal going verbal, infertility cases left and right. It was just drastic. People, their anxiety was going away, depression was improving, and it was just the foundation of what they were doing in that clinic, and it resonated with me, and that was my first experience with it. And I latched onto it and kept looking at different genes and things that we couldn't get through any other labs, and a lot of privacy issues were coming around about some of these labs sending data overseas and selling the data on the back end to different companies. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And found a geneticist, and we opened a lab together, and we have machines now. We have 100%, control of all the samples, the data, and everything. And we can look at the genes that we want to look at. And it's kind of how we got here.
Yeah, amazing. The experience that you're talking about, privacy and a little bit of, do I want my genetic information? I had run a 23andMe, oh goodness, must have been 12, 13 years ago.
Same.
And one day I pop open my email. Not only is your data being sold, but your company's been acquired. Everything about, like, you could literally say we let you into like Superman's back cupboard closet where you have all my weaknesses and fears, and I'm like, now they're out there in the world. I was shocked to see that. Do you know exactly what unfolded with the 23andMe situation, which I know many people are frustrated about?
Well, that started really a long time ago. They were selling data on the back end in your terms of service. That's how they can get away with selling that or doing that kind of testing for that cheap. $69, $99. They're making their money somewhere else. I guarantee you. I know what it costs to run these machines. And but yeah, that's kind of was the beginning of it, was the privacy. And we were the first to market, data privacy, but they actually had, I think, a pretty bad, they got hacked, I believe, had a pretty bad data breach. And I think that was the final straw. But I try not to meddle in other competitors' business too much.
Of course. Yeah. I think that's the right road to take. It's really interesting. I've watched some of this unfold in the space, and definitely it's not limited to the area of looking at genetics and epigenetics. Let me ask you, when you are talking to somebody and they don't know that this is a tool we can use to improve our health, how would you explain the value of understanding a genetic report, and what are we looking at?
Well, so in our space, in health and wellness, there's literally thousands of things that you can do. Millions of different diets, millions of supplements, different, biohacking things, different lifestyle, and thousands of things you can do. And the genetics really tells you your strengths and your weaknesses. And if you know your strengths and your weaknesses, your tendencies, you can tailor those thousands of things. You can narrow it down to like 5 or 6, maybe. So it saves a lot of guessing, and it tells you what labs you need to really look at. And we're getting to a point now where we can actually start to tailor the lab ranges based off genetics. There's some things in B12 that if you don't know this genetics and your labs are normal, you may not be normal. You have to get further testing done. That's not standard of care, even within the functional med space. So even the lab ranges can change.
Mm-hmm. So
it really just gives you a roadmap of what you need to do, I feel like.
And how do we as consumers, right? So this is I have plenty of practitioners that listen to the show and many doctors I respect. And at the same time, this audience is a consumer based. It's people that are really interested in taking radical ownership of their health. How do you deal with this information and not allow it to become overweighted, i.e. that it's not deterministic in our health? And for someone to see a report and say, oh my goodness, because people say this to me all the time. They come in the gate really hot. Oh, I have MTHFR, or I have the phenotype that I cannot let go of mold. It's very concrete. And in my head, I'm like, well, those are genetic SNPs, yes, and it's multifactorial, and there's many different pathways the body could work around that or turn that gene on or off. How do you have the conversation when somebody comes in and they're looking at a genetic report and they're attempting to not allow it to be heavily weighted or deterministic? Like, how do you explain that the gene, just because you have a genetic SNP, does not mean that that is your future?
Right. It's your tendencies. And I like to look at MTHFR and these types of things as a disadvantage, not necessarily as a diagnosis or something. And if people do it, sometimes they see reports from other labs and they see a bunch of reds and yellows, and they kind of freak out with it. And that's not necessarily the case. And some of these variants are sometimes beneficial. So we've actually changed our reports trying to address this particular thing in multiple different ways. We switched the color codings to shades of blue, so it's not so like, oh my gosh, this is awful, because it's not. It's and knowledge is power. And that's what it comes down to. Knowledge is power. If we know that your weaknesses and you have a disadvantage in folate or a disadvantage in B12, a disadvantage in neurotransmitter degradation, or something along those lines, we can support those. So most of the stuff is modifiable. Lifestyle, diet, we can improve these things and mitigate the risks. So I'd really just harp on that knowledge is power when it comes to that. Even with APOE, because a lot of times people, I don't want to know my Alzheimer's risk. Well, if you do, you can take the steps needed to really mitigate these risks. And I've reversed it in a couple of patients. Like they couldn't remember why they were seeing me. They were calling my office every day, multiple times, because they were, why am I seeing you? Couldn't remember why. And the things we were doing, they stopped calling. They, every once a week they started calling, and they stopped altogether, and now they're fine. So knowledge is power is how I'd like to address that.
Yeah. It's what you do with that information. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. There's many companies on the marketplace that are offering this service now. I feel like I see one a week that is popping up.
Yeah.
What is the big difference that you have done with your company, your machine, and your labs that sets MaxGen Labs apart from the other people in the space?
Well, we were the first, like I said, to market data privacy. So we don't sell data on the back end. We have probably 1,000 SpongeBobs in the system for names. And you got to remember, this isn't just cholesterol levels and blood sugar levels. This is your genetic code. It's identifiable. So even if it's sterilized data, it's still your fingerprint. Mm-hmm. So we really took a lot of energy and financial, dumped a lot of money into this privacy thing. And what sets us really apart, I feel, is a couple things. We actually own the equipment we run. So we are in charge of the maintenance, the primer designs, the chemical quantities we use, the reagents. What you'll see a lot of these companies that are coming, and we've been around since 2016, 2017. We've been doing this a while. And you see these new companies come on, and I'll be honest, it takes a couple years to really get things right. We screwed up a lot in the beginning. It's part of growing, And
Yeah.
we've got things like hammered down now. But the problem is a lot of these labs are outsourcing the data to other labs. Like we mentioned earlier, some are even sending it to China. The problem with that is if you don't have control, the lab's going to cut corners. You don't have control of the quality of the data. And if you're getting bad data, you're going to get bad results. And we don't cut corners with reagents. We actually we use more reagents than necessary. Overly cautious. Everything's up to date on the maintenance on the machines. If anything starts acting weird, we rerun it and service the machines. We have redundancy in place. We have multiple machines now. That's the big one that I'm seeing now. Is this the outsourcing of data and the quality of data? I'm really concerned about what some of these other people are doing. What other thing that sets us apart is we designed the reports to be very easy to understand. A lot of people were like, how do I implement this? How do I do this? We laid the reports out in order of physiological importance, what to do first, second, third. And people are like, I don't know what to do. Start with page 1. Then move to page 2. Move to page 3. We even broke it into 3 sections, and a foundational section, which is really trying to remove things that are offending the body, like environmental toxins that people are specifically more sensitive to than others, different foods that they might be more sensitive to, and just trying to remove things that offend the body. And then the core section is the next section. That's when we start giving the body what it needs. We start doing B12 supplementation, folates, phosphatidylcholines, B6s, different things. And then we have an advanced section to kind of mop up anything that's, left over. Yeah. You can fix a lot of things. If someone can't break down histamine in their diet, they're going to have anxiety. They're going to have, fatigue, migraine headaches, irregular menstrual cycle things. And we prioritize that in the beginning because that can manifest in so many different ways. And you're throwing medication at it. You're throwing, and a lot of people, they just check MTHFR. There's a lot of stuff you got to do before you start monkeying around with folate. So that's kind of what we've done. I feel like that separates us apart is that. And since we control the machines, we can control the turnaround time. So we're right around 7 days right now from when we get the samples. So we're extremely fast.
Incredible.
Trying to do things the right way, and it's paid off. The consumers, I think, understand that, and we have an extremely good reputation. We get a ton of referrals. We're basically all referral based. But you do a good job, it'll pay off. And it's paid off.
That's, the other thing I'll speak to, give your team a little shout out, is that I've been around your booth at a couple of the big events across the United States, and your team is just so sweet and lovely. And everybody that I spoke to had a personal experience where something in their life, be it a child who is on an autistic spectrum or somebody who is dealing with post-cancer treatment or high cholesterol, everybody had a personal experience where the very similar story, I had been lost in the woods, and finally, for the first time in my life, I had a clarity step moving forward. And this is where I'm at today. Here's where my kid's at today. It was really lovely. And everybody was so grounded and human. I never felt like anybody was trying to sell me anything. And I just deeply appreciate that energetics.
Yeah, I have a great team right now. Great team.
Yeah, you really do. It's why I was like, I want to get Chad on. I want to get Chad on. They're like, he's so busy. I was like, I'll wait.
Yeah, it's been a year. And I'm in the middle of moving, so I normally have stuff on these shelves, but we're packing. So
life happens when you are trying to run a next level optimization company. Can we go through just a couple terms, because again, I'm in this world, and sometimes I get confused when we're talking about DNA. We're talking about that's the molecule that carries genetic information into your cells. And our genes Like our genes are specific segments of DNA that contain instructions for development, function, for growth, reproduction of the body. Do I have that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I like to refer to the DNA as like a recipe book, that your family handed you.
Yes.
Like my mom has this recipe book that came from her grandmother, or my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And each gene is like a recipe in the book, like an apple pie or a pumpkin pie.
Mm-hmm.
And then each of the ingredients and the steps of the recipe is the different parts of the variants that we're looking at in the genes. So any little change in the variant or change in the ingredient is going to change the outcome of the pie. And my mom's pumpkin pie is the best you'll ever have. I mean, I'll put it up against anybody. But her
Okay.
apple pie is terrible. I wouldn't feed it to. So that's her strengths and her weaknesses. And you can see that from the rest by reading the recipe book. And that's basically what we're doing with genetics. That's how I kind of like to describe it.
And if we could, and tell me if I get any of these wrong, an allele is spelled Allele. That's a variant form of a gene. So that's a different sequence in your DNA. So that's going to account for, my eye color versus my brother's, a genetic trait. It's why I express the way I do. Is that correct?
The allele is just referring to the nucleotide base that's there, like an A, C, T, or G. So the allele can be wild type, which is found in nature the most, or a variant. So allele can go either way. But allele is that letter. A, C, T, or G. A, T, C, or G.
Let me do this first, and then give me your. How would you explain? Again, we're having a cup of coffee. How would you explain to me my SNP, my single nucleotide polymorphism?
So a polymorphism or a SNP is when we change the allele. So we call that a SNP or polymorphism or a polymorphic SNP. So the allele can change. So someone might have an A and it'll change to a G. So that's changing the instruction or the ingredient in that recipe. And that may change the function of that enzyme or protein or pumpkin pie.
Yeah. And so the way I would normally explain this through a story is, and it's why I want to shake my fist at the internet when I see somebody telling me or that I need like this methylated compound or this supplement, because from my understanding, my SNPs are going to impact how I respond to a drug or a supplement, or my susceptibility to an environmental factor. And that's nuanced, right? That's why, because we have this powerful information, this knowledge, which we said in the beginning, that's why we want to have this in the conversation. Would you join with me on that?
Let's go.
Yep. Let's go. I just, for me, it's money, right? I'm so frugal when I talk about health. I don't want to waste my money. I don't want to say, well, maybe I can buy it and try it for 90 days. And am I really a good judge of the changes in my physiology based on one supplement with all these other variants? I don't think I have that discernment because I'm so easily influenced by everything. I think it's a smarter way to go get your car serviced. I guess it's like, yeah, if you have a foreign car, you're going to take that Porsche to a Porsche dealer. You can't go to just any mechanic.
Right. Yeah. And just because you have a SNP or a variant doesn't mean you need to supplement anything. Like I truly believe I trained under Walter Schmidt, and I love that guy to death. Rest in peace, buddy. He always told us, was like, you need to have 2 indications before giving a supplement. And I think he's right. And an indication could be a genetic SNP like MTHFR, but you need to have something else like a lab or a symptom. So if someone's, depressed, they have low mood, and they have MTHFR, let's try some methylfolate, but or let's run the labs and see. You got to have 2. And that's my reports. We bring in symptoms almost to every page of the report. And if you have these, and then supplement with this or run these labs. So it's kind of a confusing world we live in when it comes to this. It's kind of the Wild West still.
Yeah. And do you train practitioners how to use MaxGen? Is there a training program?
We're working on one. We'll work directly with the practitioner, go through. We have some physicians on staff or practitioners on staff to do physician training, just one-on-one. We'll offer two or three for free, and just to get them kind of up to speed. But really, when it comes to this stuff, just read the report. The report is broken down beautifully to explain exactly what's going on. But I know under physicians, we have to learn quick and do it quick. And all the data is on the back end too, on the back of the report, we're broke down real quick. So, I mean, if I'm looking at one, I don't really do consulting anymore, but if I'm looking at one, I'll just flip to the back page and just look at all the variants. And it breaks down what each one does and what you're going to see in that patient. But we're working on an actual training program. So we'll get it up hopefully by the end of the year.
Wonderful. Yeah, I just ask because I have found that, again, within the bell curve of human beings, you're going to need people that just need to be handheld through every piece of it, and it needs to be delivered in a fashion they might not get it from reading it, because it's almost like, wow, it kind of feels like I'm looking at French for the first time. Well, I know that word and I know that one, but the complete picture is not landing in my knowing yet.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the best way to do it is to run one on yourself and then have a consult call with one of our providers and go through it. If you learn on yourself, you're going to learn, you're more interested. And that's kind of how I research stuff too. I have my genetics pulled up and I'm going back and forth. It keeps me motivated to keep learning. So I think that's a good way to learn, is just yourself and your family, and work with us on that. And we'll get some training modules up soon that hit big targets, like big topics like histamine and hormones.
Man, the histamine one is big.
Dude, it's so overlooked. It's
so big right now.
So overlooked. And you've got to deal with histamine before you start messing with folates. Dude, anything that's stimulating the immune system or offending it is going to slow down the citric acid cycle. Your healing is going to slow down. So you really need to address histamine and remove things that are offending your body first. I truly believe that.
Is there a complementary blood test or a lab that you like to have an understanding about histamine that goes well with the genetic report?
Some people like to look at tryptase. They like to look at whole blood histamines. I typically don't. I'd rather look at symptoms, because if someone has the variants on it, they're pretty accurate on whether someone's going to have issues or not. And then they typically will see the symptom list and like, oh my God, this is me. Yep. We don't really need to follow up labs. Let's modify the diet. And then, the thing with that too is the histamine containing foods are like fermented foods like kimchi and kombucha. And this is stuff what people are drinking and eating, trying to help improve the microbiome in their stomach. And if you're drinking these fermented foods, you're going to flare that up so bad. That's me. I get kind of tingly when I drink kombucha. It's not, those individuals cannot drink it. So, and they're told by mainstream functional medicine to eat these things.
Yeah.
So it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really is a situation where we're in a world where patient know thyself is so important. And I think that's the direction of the path to greatest improvement right now is to know yourself and to take radical ownership of some of these things, because it's hard, all the variables, to have someone do it for you.
Yeah, you've got to treat the patient who has the disease, not the condition or disease that the patient has.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me ask you this before let me ask you this, Chad. I sent you over my partner's genetic report, which we ran through MaxGen for Cynthia. Do you have that pulled up?
I do.
Amazing. Before we go there, thank you, Cynthia, for allowing us to talk about your report. We're just going to make a couple visits to this. We're gonna pull a little data. We're gonna have a conversation that expands using one of your reports, because I think that's where the true value is. Before we do that, again, within the marketplace, there's lots of I'd call it marketing. It's like, well, we report on 100 SNPs. We report on 500. We report on 5,000. How many SNPs can we look at today and which ones are scientifically validated? Like, is there a range of like where the science exists today? Because I think sometimes we find people overreaching. There's not enough research, but we're making a claim around a certain genetic SNP at this point.
That's actually a good thing to talk about. So there is a lot of people that are like, oh, we check 30,000 genes, 600,000 genes, or full genome sequencing. Majority of those do absolutely nothing. There's no research behind it. There's even some labs saying these are experimental. Well, if they're experimental, they would have been in the research already. Like, we have some pretty good research out there, where we've done whole genome testing on a lot of people. And the only time that these really expanded panels really come into play is if you've got an ultra rare variant that we may never have seen before. And if you're going down that rabbit hole, you're going to spend over $1,000 to get that done correctly. $1,100, $1,200, $1,300, if not $6,000 or $7,000. And if someone has an ultra rare variant like that, you're going to know when they're a kid. They're going to get caught by the pediatrician. They're going to go ahead and run full genetic sequencing back then. So yeah, right now I don't think more is better necessarily, unless you're dealing with a failure to thrive case when the kid's like 2 days old, 3 days, 5 days old. But when you're looking at from a functional medicine standpoint, or trying just to improve people's health, we only look at about 200, 220 SNPs that we've documented and have research to prove. And the other thing, there's a lot of SNPs too that get passed down together, so they're in linkage. So you'll see people, oh, we checked 20 SNPs within DAO. There's only like 3 or 4 that really occur individually. The others pass down at the same, so there's really no reason to check all of them. So we just narrow it down to the ones you really need to look at that have validated research behind them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, 200, 300 probably right now, I feel like.
Yeah, I actually, and within the biological blueprint, I focus on like the top 7 or 8, and it's usually the MTHFR, the COMT genes, the CYP, the GST-M1 and GST-TT1, and then I find people get a lot of value from just those and starting that conversation.
Extremely.
Yeah. What are your thoughts around that?
So those are the biggies. Those are the big ones. There's a lot of big ones. The glutathione SNPs are massive. The folate SNPs are massive. And yeah, absolutely. You're going to get an incredible result looking at just those 6 or 7.
Yeah. My big aha moment is that for a long time when I was working really primarily 99% was in the world of chronic illness and Lyme and mold, because that was my cross I was choosing to carry around for many years, is that I would see people in the same moldy, sick house, and you have one guy that has Alzheimer's-like symptoms or can't walk. Everybody else in the family is relatively fine. They've all been breathing in the same level of toxicant. And the same thing with Lyme. I kept seeing this again and again. It would have one child, failure to launch, couldn't go to high school anymore. Other 2 kids are fine. They're in college. And if we tested the family, everybody had Lyme. Everybody in that household. It was that body, the milieu, that fishbowl that was expressing an incredibly challenging time handling that infection or that biological burden from the environment. Yeah. And for me, I was just like, this is where this needs to come into the conversation.
Yeah, we're adding that in. A lot of that's based off of some of the HLA types, and we're working it into the report right now. That's kind of my top priority at the moment, is getting that launched. I've already designed it. We've got the primers. We've got sample data in. If you've got some patients that you want to throw, I could use some sample client data on some people who are really sensitive. But that's true. The HLA typing makes people overly sensitive to mold, overly sensitive to Lyme, Bartonella, those types of things, as well as the Marcon's and the nose infection. All those too. They're all the same relative gene location. How you get rid of these toxins and handle these biotoxins.
Yeah. I do have
And
people. I'm going to send some people. I'm going to be sending people your way.
yeah, let's talk after this about it. I
Yeah.
got really some really cool stuff up my sleeve coming.
Amazing. Amazing. And needed. That's really, yeah, really, really helpful just to touch on that. And then the last thing I want to go before we just talk about a report a little bit, um, can, can we expand a little bit on this conversation of the epigenetic influence or the epigenome? We hear this a lot, the environment's impact on gene expression. How does that come into play, and how do you start that conversation with people in that education process?
So pretty much everything you do is essentially epigenetic.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't do genetic testing because it's all about epigenetic." Well, yeah, but what epigenetic factors are going to matter the most in that patient? That's what the genetics is going to tell you. The genetics essentially loads the gun. It's the epigenetics that pulls the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess methylation is kind of the safety switch on the gun. So that's kind of how I like to look at it. But the epigenetic stuff is definitely what we're modifying based off genetics. So
Mm-hmm.
the lifestyle, the environment. And the cool thing about our reports and genetics in general, I feel like, is it brings up the conversation of, food dyes, food additives, mold, things that people may not really be aware of. And it brings
Mm-hmm.
it to their, oh, okay, I might need to modify that factor. But yeah, in my opinion, epigenetics is pretty much everything,
Yeah,
everything
I
that
would
we
join.
do.
I would join with you in that. Let's flip over and talk about this report a little bit.
Okay.
And let's say I'm Cynthia, and we bust open this guy and start the conversation here and just see, okay, here's what I see. Here's where you may want to look, and walk us through this a little bit.
Oh man, this is.
And we can just pick 3 or 4 talking points.
We
Chad,
might want to do that because it could be an hour or 2 hour walkthrough.
yeah,
And then,
pick 2 or 3 walking points where you say, oh, this could be really helpful. I can tell you where I'm fascinated by some of these.
yeah, let's talk. Let's start there. Tell me what's fascinating you, and then what.
Well, I love it is at page 7. I love the conversation around fats. So understanding dietary habits and their
Mhm.
underlying genetic influence that are going to be related to the fats we use. And so on Cynthia's report, the HDL cholesterol, monosaturated fats, and it kind of walks us through here, like how these different lipid molecules impact overall health.
Mhm. That's important too. The thing that I like to really focus on is in the fats and inflammation is, we break down fats into different types of immune chemicals like leukotrienes and prostaglandins. Um, she's actually not that bad, but
Mm-hmm.
some of these people, you know, are really, really like myself, sensitive to seed oils and omega 6s. And I
Mm-hmm.
know I do extremely well on carnivore diets, like extremely well on it. And if I eat a lot of like other fats, I get kind of puffy and I don't do well on it. But we look at how you're breaking these things down into omega 3s and those actual cytokines.
Mm-hmm.
Huge there for inflammation. Some of these people just really need extra fish oil. Um, she's kind of in the middle on that. Um, I'm full blown. I have to have it, or I'm not doing too good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, like I really it was for me, if I was looking at this report and I'm looking at inflammation and fats, and I can see here, you know, I've got my category on the left-hand side, which is chronic inflammation, and then I see my anti-inflammatory foods, and then I see my pro-inflammatory foods.
Mhm.
So for her, anti-inflammatory is blueberries, ginger and turmeric, dark chocolate, olive oil, grass-fed butter, free-range eggs, grass-fed beef, wild-caught fatty fish, and broccoli. Whereas her sugar, vegetable oils, fried foods, wheat flour, dairy. Is this tailored to her, or are we just listing those as typical anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory foods within the diet?
That's just typical. That's
I
just a
got it.
standard, yeah, to kind of bring it to people's attention. Okay, I might want to eat these. You'll see throughout my reports, you'll see, like I said, symptoms, but you'll see foods to eat and foods not to eat almost at
Mm-hmm.
every page. I'm not trying to sell a supplement. I'm trying to get someone's life
Mm-hmm.
back where it needs to be. Um, I wish my sister would take my advice.
Well, that's the challenge, right? That's the
uh,
challenge is bringing, how do you bring the people that we love the most into this?
mhm.
It's like, man, I wish you would just do this because it would be really great information. Like on her report, I see specifically here fish oil. You have a mild increased need for omega-3 for neurological health.
Mhm.
And so it's consider eating a little bit of fish in your diet.
Yeah,
Also, like these omega-6s that can be good or bad. It says she's normal risk for sensitivity, but it's still advisable to avoid excessive omega-6, which we know that
yeah,
ratio is we want it for most people leaning towards that omega-3.
yeah. And I think this whole debate against seed oils versus animal oils,
Mm-hmm.
who's actually right? And I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I think it's genetics that's going to actually show ultimately, like, okay, these people really do need to avoid seed oils, and these people are actually okay on it.
Mm-hmm.
So just add that in there.
Yeah. I mean, I saw, again, going through this report, it's like for her, everything it seemed like from inflammation to even the histamine activity. And you guys do a great job at breaking down the cycle of how this is self perpetuating if we're eating the wrong foods and we're not
Mhm.
engaging in the right lifestyle practices. But for her, again, it was very mild, and this, I see this in a restaurant. Like I have to be so much more sensitive. There's certain nuts, certain seeds. I'm highly sensitive to gluten, where she can get away with doing it, where
Mhm.
the next morning I'll wake up, I'll have my joint pains changed the next
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, she's not really showing any histamine things, which is good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think we see this in about 20 to 30% of the people. We see
Hmm.
histamine stuff, which is a big chunk of people running around. But yeah,
Yep.
she should be able to tolerate it well.
Now I do see, now this is interesting too, because she grew up on a farm in Texas. If I move down to the toxic exposures, and I do know that from her history, she'd worked around
Ooh,
specific chemicals and pesticides. I do see here where she does have an increased sensitivity to insecticides.
she's
Um,
got, yeah.
yeah, talk about this page a little bit.
So this is kind of a cool page. Once again, it brings up that discussion with patients that, hey, how clean is your environment?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it, especially if she's overly sensitive. So we're looking at different research that shows different immune system molecules changing with exposure to different types of chemicals. Some people are overly sensitive to things, and she's one of them. So she's one that really needs to really watch, like, filter her water out, um, avoid any kind of like toxic exposures, clean like personal care products. The EWG has a great list of clean cosmetics to use and some to stay away from.
Mm-hmm.
She's not going to break those things down like most people do. So yeah,
Yep.
and a lot of this, I'm not really allowed to say the cancer word, but a lot of this is based off of cancer research. So yeah, we can't, of course, say that, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is a big. Even this Tylenol, she's got an increased sensitivity to Tylenol, and that's all in the news this week, as you've seen, is RFK's potentially about to point a finger at the spectrum stuff. She's
Yeah.
got no go on Tylenol in this case.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Yeah, again, challenging conversation to have when belief becomes dogmatic. But from my
Yeah.
understanding, there is research here to support, why some of these over-the-counter NSAIDs might not be ideal given your blueprint, right?
Uh-huh. I mean, I've been saying this since 2016, 2017. This is not new. This
Yeah,
is not new data. It's
yeah.
just now coming to public light.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit more. Where do you see that? Tell me what's indicated, and why would Tylenol be so bad for somebody like Cynthia with her genetic blueprint?
So I'm not up to speed on all the statistics, but I do know Tylenol is one of the main leading causes of liver failure, and actually puts a lot of people in the hospital every year.
Mm-hmm.
They recommend this to kids at early age. What it does is we have a CYP gene that breaks down Tylenol, and what you'll see is the CYPs. The problems are when they're fast, when they speed up, and they create these toxic intermediates in between phase 1 and phase 2 liver detox. These toxic intermediates are bad. So if
Mm-hmm.
CYP is breaking things down really fast and creating a lot of these toxic intermediates, and phase 2, which would be like methylation or MTHFR, is slow, you're going to get a pool of a lot of toxic intermediates that's causing all kinds of havoc in the body. So she's got most likely, I think we looked at 2 or 3 different genes that have to do with acetaminophen toxicity. But what happens is you break it down fast and you create this toxic intermediate called NAPQI. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what causes all the liver damage. It depletes glutathione. It just burns through glutathione. So if you have to take, like I had a really bad neck injury and I was out for a long time. And I was on a narcotic that contained Tylenol.
Mm.
So I knew to take NAC and I knew to take glutathione while I was taking that Tylenol. I had no choice. So I hopefully protected my liver as best I can. If you go to the hospital for Tylenol or acetaminophen toxicity, they're going to give you NAC. So I'm just taking it prophylactically anyway. But that's what
Mm-hmm.
happens. You just break it down, you create this toxic intermediate, and it just destroys your liver. And
Yeah.
that same pathway has been associated with spectrum. And there's actually a study, I think, from the University of Arkansas that I cited, 10-year-old study. It's not a good study. It's not. I'll preface it with that. But they interviewed parents of spectrum kids, and there was a significant correlation to the parents who gave Tylenol to kids in spectrum disorder diagnosis. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's putting the pieces together of the puzzle and then again applying it and seeing how that expression plays out in behavior, in sleep, in energy, in functionality. And again, I think if you've had enough experience working with people and seeing them move through application of this information, and I guess that'd be my other question for you is like, what do you see when people follow these recommendations? And we can take something like, maybe it's optimizing your vitamin C so you're better dealing with histamines. Better, maybe it's doing something like um, supplementing and supporting vitamin D levels because you have a genetic variant that reduces your ability to ensure your body is converting it from the sun.
are you asking me kind of what we see in the results?
Yeah, that's right.
Man, I'm going to be honest. You get kind of desensitized to it because you're kind of blown away at first, like, oh, now you just expect it to work. But, I mean, I've seen kids. We have people write in all the time. I mean, we've seen a kid come off of 7 medications. We've had people lose 150 pounds, 100 pounds. Anxiety goes away. Early onset dementia is no longer a thing. The list goes on and on. And these, just MTHFR alone, there's over 400 methyltransferase enzymes that require SAMe and methylation. So you never really know how it's going to manifest, to be quite honest. That's why I'm always harping on treating the patient, not necessarily the symptom or the disease that the patient has, because you never know what's going to fix it or what these things are going to cause down the road. You just never know, really. But I mean, I could sit here and just ramble on and on about what we've accomplished.
Do you without doing any names, do you have something that's really sticking out in your head that you're like, oh, this one family, this is what happened for the kid? I love it. I love a personal story.
I had a friend, Tyler, and I probably shouldn't name his name, Sean. So
Let's call him Sean.
Sean, he came, he had the MTHFR C677, and and he was okay to take methylfolate because we look at a lot of other genes before we start recommending methylfolate, because you can overstimulate people and really put people in a bad place if you do it the wrong way, which all that's algorithms are built into our protocol. So you have very low risk of causing issues with people. But he called me the same day as his first dose and was like, "Hey, how fast can this work?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? Like, you feel better?" He's like, "Yeah, I feel like I'm in more control of my thought processes and my emotions." And I'm
Mm.
like, "Yeah, it can be the same day because it's absolutely the same day." And he started following the diet recommendations and doing everything. And I remember we went to my buddy's wedding in Florida, and we're all on the beach, kind of hanging out, you know, and he takes his shirt off. Freddie, he was jacked. We were all like, "Are you on steroids, bud? Like, what are you?" And I'm like, "You've got to be sticking something, man." Like, he's like, "No, man, I've been doing what the report says. I've been eating clean." Uh, I'm like, "Bro, you have a six pack. Like, what is going?" He's like, "I swear to you." He's like, "I feel great. I've been working out." And I'm like, "Okay, you're shredded." That's a cool story. I had another one. We kind of mentioned her earlier. I love talking about this one. She was 50, like early 50s, early onset dementia. The one that was calling my office every day.
Mm-hmm.
And like, why am I seeing Dr. Yarbrough? Why am I? And she had a bunch of detox pathways that were just messed up, and I'm like, "Ooh, this is rough." And we did a urine test for environmental chemicals, and it was off the charts on all this stuff. Like, oh my gosh, this woman has no chance here. So we put her in a sauna. We started treating her specifically to those pathways, and her calling stopped. It was every other day and once a week, and we were kind of monitoring her progression based off how often she was calling the front desk. And after a couple months, and this woman had been to Mayo Clinic, she had been to Vanderbilt, and they just said, "Go home and make arrangements." And I think we had her back almost normal within 2 or 3 months, just with targeted detoxification, and we cleaned up her environment and got her in a sauna. Uh, I mean, that's crazy. And I
Mm-hmm.
can't tell you how many, fertility cases we've got running around here. It's just wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing to hear. Let's just hit the let's just talk about, because I think this is also fascinating. Um, her specific, I think it's page 16, her MTHFR folate pattern. And
Mhm.
so we could just maybe make some notes here on things that would be, again, unique to this genetic report and how nuance might come into play with designing a program.
Yeah, let's do that for sure. Because our MTHFR and folate and B12 pages, I think, are second to none. Um, so yeah, everyone knows MTHFR. That's what converts or creates methylfolate. If you look there on the right, we look at the absorption of folate. We look at the entire pathway, because you can have MTHFR, but you can have upstream variants too that are going to make this even worse. And even some people who don't have MTHFR may still have folate problems because they're not absorbing it. And it's the same for B12. But we're looking at the intestine absorptional here. She's actually got a little issue with the absorption of folates, um,
Mm-hmm.
which is semi kind of rare. We don't see that often, but that's kind of a biggie. Um, she may need to take a lot more of it just to get it in. And sometimes you can do even IVs of it if it's
Mm-hmm.
real bad. Her cell transport proteins are okay. The two enzymes that are upstream from MTHFR are intermediate. She has yellow there, so she does have one copy of a variant. So those are potentially a little slower. So that's going to compound the MTHFR issue that she's got. And she's compound MTHFR, so she's, I think, like around a 40% reduction in activity there, maybe 50% reduction. But when you combine these others, she may have even more.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she's highly likely to be sensitive to methylfolate. So this is a complicated case. So we look at a bunch of other SNPs to kind of determine if someone's going to react negatively to methylfolate. As you know, I've given methylfolate when I first started this. You just checking MTHFR, and I gave a kid methylfolate, and he punched a TV, cussed out a cop, got arrested, and I was like, "Oops, that might have been my bad." Because if you give methylfolate to some people, they can have anger issues, they can get really upset, and you got to kind of try to predict those with some of the other variants. And this is a case where she might not do very well with methylfolate. So in those types of cases, you can do folinic acid. It's a little lesser stimulating form of folate that's easily to get over the counter. It's a great product. Or you can even do other things to lower the demand on it. So phosphatidylcholine or creatine even. I love creatine. I take it every day. If you react negative with methylfolate, creatine might be your savior. This really sensitive individuals do really well on it. Even phosphatidylcholine. So that's where hers report's looking at to me. I'd start with some folinic acid, some creatine, after she's done everything previous in the report. She's got, I mean, this isn't going to fix those sensitivities to those environmental toxins that she's got. She has to probably do a really heavy detox. Probably would feel really good after a good solid detox. And she may even want to take, like I have some of those too, and I prophylactically take like a mild detox pill every day just to support those pathways daily. That's something she might want to do too.
And when you say a mild detox pill, what are you referring to? Like a some sort of a binder?
I do really well. Like Zymogen has a pill. I can't remember what it's for, but they use it in some of their detox programs. I just take it 1 or 2 a day prophylactically, and I seem to do really well on it.
Great. I'll look that up.
Yeah.
I'll look that up. Yeah,
De-
super helpful. Do you you mentioned that people do have the opportunity to get on with somebody of the team and walk through a report. What does that look like through MaxGen Labs?
You'd have to ask one of the practitioners. I don't know. Right. We're not currently doing like consumer reviews. We're
Okay.
considering doing consumer reviews. Mainly physician will go through and kind of help them interpret and plan a plan of action, what to do, answer any questions they may have. I think they're about an hour long. So if you have a practitioner that goes through it, come with questions.
Great. Well, she's a physician's assistant, and so I do think she really appreciates the pathway, the toxicology, the pharmacokinetics. She wants to understand the mechanism of action when she's looking at something like this. So I do think it would be really helpful.
Yeah, Debbie would be great for her to do a review with. And Debbie's awesome too. She's great. She loves doing this stuff. She loves it. She loves teaching. So we have really good people there too.
Great. Well, we'll set that up. It's really helpful to go through this, Chad. And it's just, again, I want to implore people, if this isn't something you've done yet, the report is beautifully laid out. It's color coded. There's images, there's infographics. The pathway is, again, color coded so you can understand kind of like where there's a green light and it's going to move through that pathway, where it might slow down with a little bit of a yellow. Yeah, really easy to follow from my understanding.
Yeah, she's got some hormone issues too.
Great. Well, we're going to get her on with Debbie. I'm going to set her loose. She's going to come with some questions.
Yeah, she needs to.
Great.
This is a tough one.
Great. She's she's a gem. I can't wait. All right, Cynthia, you're being called out of the show. Let me ask you, just because we're at our hour here, I want to be mindful of your time. I want to talk about lifestyle factors. And given the report, what are some consistencies, if you had a magic wand for people to change as far as lifestyle behaviors that you see the big needle movers in some of these pathways? Is there anything that comes to mind or jumps out for you?
Right now I'm looking at hers and she's the toxic stuff. I think it's so easy for people to see this as an MTHFR and give methylfolate. I think one of the biggest needle movers and one of the most important things we can do with individuals, especially with genetics like hers, is to try to remediate the environment of pollution, toxic chemicals. That's such a huge thing to me, I feel like, because these things mess things up downstream so bad. Smoking, if you look at the research that we're looking at, smoking is almost in every paper. If someone's still smoking, stop. We try to give people recommendations on how to stop based off genetics too, because it's such an important thing to stop. It just messes up so many of the CYPs, so much of the detoxification. And the detoxification, I think, is just massive right now because there's hundreds of thousands of chemicals getting added every year that's not tested. It's proven safe until proven otherwise. These things are messing us up left and right. And with her specifically, with that fast CYP, with the hormone degradation for estrogens, and she has a slow COMT, is what the methylation pathway that breaks that down. Her hormones are probably all over the place with estrogens. Very sensitive, highly reactive estrogens. So even her estrogen levels at a normal doc is just going to look normal, but she needs an advanced Dutch panel now because this stuff causes so many issues later in life. Yeah, that's the biggest thing I think right now is just slow down and look at the environment and try to live as clean as we possibly can before you start trying to throw vitamins and minerals and stuff.
Yeah. Well, luckily, she lives with me, and we do weekly full body lymphatic drainage. We have a beautiful sauna at the house. We have great oxidative support, whether it's molecular hydrogen or we have a nano-V. We've got an ozone machine. It's pretty high level. We do pulse electromagnetic field. We have a full body red light panel. She's very strong, very physically active, a completely organic household. We eat clean. We do castor oil packs. So I think I would say we're in the 1 percentile as far as what is the daily application. It's a practice at the household, right? I love this term. This is a rhythm that we're creating. It is not a sprint. We're not going to do this in a week. You're not going to do that. I call hoo-ha on the any type of a juice cleanse. There isn't a cleanse in 2 weeks. It's a lifestyle. This is the long game, right? We want to go for the long game. So it's the daily practices that we do consistently that are going to be the big needle movers in life. And that's what I see in people, and that's what I've seen in my story.
Yeah.
I love all this stuff, but I also don't talk about it for a sponsorship or an affiliate link. I talk about it because I practice it and it's worked for me.
Yeah. You're right. And it's not just taking a pill. And that's what supplementing is turning into, is just taking a pill for something. That's not my test is not designed to sell supplements like a lot of our competitors are,
Yeah.
This is a lifestyle change.
Yeah. I always tell people, just take pause if somebody's selling you the test and then they're selling you the same solution out of the same umbrella. That it's really hard to not be influenced by that bias. It's just human, that's our psyche. The incentive model is not going to be your friend in this sandbox, if you will.
Yeah, correct. I agree. And people ask me all the time, why don't you sell supplements? I'm like, I don't want to get that reputation, really.
Yeah. I don't want that headache.
No, me neither. I know what we do well, and we do it well, and we'll stick to it.
Beautiful. So your last question, Chad, what is it you see people that come in and they've hit a stumbling block. They've fallen down. They're a little bit broken. And this is the Beautifully Broken podcast, putting the pieces back together. What does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
Oh man. I think it's humbling, when you accept it and realize where you are and where you stand in it, and you have to make a change. And when you make that change and you see the reward, I think is the beauty in it to me. So
beautiful. Thank you for being a guest on the Beautifully Broken podcast. We will give people, you can find the link to MaxGen Genetics report. What do reports cost these days?
Between 200 and 350 with payment plans. We have family discounts. So roughly that's your range.
And what's the value of doing like the all-in high level versus the base package?
The bigger panels gives you the dietary recommendations. We started off with the max function, which is our functional med panel, which is all the detox, all that stuff. And we have a food panel, which is the dietary and lifestyle stuff. So I really recommend the big one so you get all of it together. But some people, they just want to see the detox pathways, and that's why we have the max function.
Amazing. And just the last question, I have a test. It's on the table behind me. I'm going to run mine. And is there anything I need to do as far as prepping to collect a sample?
Nope. Just don't eat for an hour. Wash your mouth out. Make sure you swab this cheek and not the other one.
Yep.
I don't like getting colored swabs in the mail.
Yeah. Chad pointed to his mouth. Yes. Just so we're all clear on that.
Right here.
So. Amazing. Thank you for giving us some time today, Chad. I appreciate you.
Oh, thanks, Jimmy. Or Freddie.
That's all right. We're going to leave it because Jimmy is
really
so... Do you want to know what, though? Do you want to know what? I bet I have started out 15 podcasts and people say, hi, Jimmy, because Jimmy Kimmel. It's in the news. Talk about a program that is running.
Oh, man.
I love it.
Embarrassed.
No, it's good. It's good. I love it. Thank you, Chad.
Freddie's kind of like Jimmy. Freddie, Jimmy, almost.
It's close. But it's marketed over you're going to hear that on every time Jimmy Kimmel is mentioned on ABC. Totally good. Big love, man.